Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Big League Dreaming, the podcast. On today's show, we talked to a pretty cool guest who is following the Notre Dame baseball team during the College World Series playoff. Zach, I think people will want to tune into this one, right?
Yes, I mean, I learned a lot. I follow college baseball, but just to have like that expert insider behind the scenes was really cool.
And Zane, I think we might have some breaking news on the podcast as well.
Yeah, Tom dropped some little nuggets in there that you guys are gonna like to hear. Asked him about the whole Florida State situation, so we'll get his take on that. And, you're gonna want to stick around and listen to it.
So we're talking to Tom Noie. He is the baseball writer and columnist at South Bend Tribune, the ND Insider. He is coming up, as well as the show, all here on Big League Dreaming, the podcast.
Ever since I was a kid,
oh yeah,
I was big league dreaming.
I was big league dreaming.
For as long as I live,
always,
I'm big league dreaming.
I never got to bat in the major leagues. I'd have liked to have that chance, just once, to stare down a big league pitcher. Make him think you know something he doesn't. Chance to squint at a sky so blue that it hurts your eyes just to look at. To feel the tingle in your arm as you connect with the ball. To run the bases, stretch a double into a triple, and flop face first. Wrap your arms around the bag. That's my wish for Kinsella.
And welcome to another edition of Big League Dreaming, the podcast. So great to have a new guest, a first-time guest to the show. We're going to introduce him in a second. But first, let me again tell you that Big League Dreaming is a podcast about fulfilling your dreams and taking it to the next level. It's stories about baseball, whether it's professional baseball at the major league level, AAA, AA, single A, low A. I don't think we've been to a low A game yet on this show. We've covered college baseball, all different levels. We even dipped down to Little League baseball. Yeah, we followed the team from Michigan that went all the way to the Little League World Series. You can follow all the podcasts wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Tune in and listen to that coverage as well. All right, the format of the show, it's dad and his three sons. In this case, we got two of the three joining us on the podcast. Say hello to son number one, Zak Gonzalez, the Mariners fan.
Yes, hey guys, happy to be here.
Good to have you. And then look who's joining us from South Bend, Indiana. It's son number three, the Red Sox fan, Zane Gonzalez. How you doing, Zane?
What's going on, everybody? It's been a while since I've been on a podcast, so I'm excited to get on right before the World Series.
Well, one of my favorite podcasts that you and Zach did last year, because I wasn't able to join, was to talk about the College World Series. So we wanted to make sure that we addressed that. And lo and behold, I was coming off that big series in South Bend where my Chippewas, the Central Michigan University baseball team, battled as hard as they could, but didn't quite make it out of there. So I am excited to talk about this year's World Series because we've been watching a lot of games this season and this tournament time and getting excited for Omaha. Joining us on the show, he is from ND Insider. His name is Tom. Oh, I hope I don't mess it up here. Is it Noie?
Noie, there you go. Good
Right.
job.
Tom Noie, a veteran communicator and a journalist who is based in South Bend. So, hey, Zane, have you and Tom hung out at all at, somewhere like at Corby's or something?
No, I haven't seen Tom at Corby's at all.
That's a good thing. That could be a good thing. I'm a little too old for the Corby's crowd. So I'm also usually, when I'm not moonlighting as the columnist and baseball writer for the South Bend Tribune, covering Notre Dame, I cover Notre Dame men's basketball, and I've covered Notre Dame men's basketball now. This upcoming season will be my 25th year covering Notre Dame hoops.
Wow. I was just looking at your bio and I'm like, I think he's as old as I am. Cause I was a writer for the Grand Rapids Press since 1990. You've been at the South Bend Tribune since 1992.
Yep. So doing a little everything. Started covering football, moved to hockey, did Notre Dame men's basketball, went back to football as I do men's basketball. And then I started and sprinkling a little baseball here this year. It's a good year to pick up the Notre Dame baseball beat with what Link Charit's been able to do.
Great year. We will talk more about your background in a second because the part of this show is we like to find out how people landed, in the position that they have and whatever they're, sports writers, field operators. We talked to the pitch clock guy with the Charlotte Knights on the last episode of Big League Dreaming, which was really informational and informative. But let's talk a little bit about Notre Dame baseball because, a year ago they were so close to making it to the College World Series in Omaha, the finals. Tom, a lot of people didn't predict that they would be able to come out of this, and take on and beat Tennessee. This is like, it has stunned a lot of people in the baseball world.
It has. Like, there are even people they're closer to the Notre Dame baseball beat than I am. We're saying they have to go to Tennessee and play the number one team in the country, play the number one team, the overall number one seed in the NCAA tournament. They have no shot of going there. Tennessee was 37-3 at home this season. They were 31-2 against non-conference opponents. And you just said it was almost a case where the people that cover Notre Dame has said, if they can keep it close and not let Tennessee get off and do the things that Tennessee does in innings, in ball games, maybe they have a chance. But they go down there the first game and they really take it to Tennessee, and you're thinking they might have a shot to win this thing and get to Omaha for the first time since 2002. That's what happens.
What was the vibe like there, with the team after that first win, that first game? Was everyone feeling pretty good?
I think they were feeling good even before. Like, we talked to the guys the previous week before they left for Knoxville, and Ryan Cole. I specifically asked Ryan Cole, I said, you look at Tennessee and you look at all the numbers, all the stats, and everything that this team has accomplished, and there's a lot of things to be intimidated by. What do you think Tennessee looks at Notre Dame and says, boy, they should be worried. We should be worried about this, about Notre Dame. And Ryan Cole was absolutely on it, 100% honest. He said, you know what? If I'm Tennessee, I'm a little scared of us right now because we're a dangerous baseball team. And usually that's a quote that you hear and you see, and you're like, that's going right up on a bulletin board. Maybe he shouldn't have said that. Maybe that's speaking out of turn. Maybe it's just a little too much bluster before a baseball series starts. But Ryan Cole says Tennessee should be afraid of us. And the first hitter of the game in the first game, the first inning, the first pitch is Ryan Cole. And he drills a line drive down the left field line. And that set the tone for the entire weekend to where it was, okay, Tennessee, you may be big, bad Tennessee, and we may just be this little program from Northern Indiana, but we're not afraid of you guys. And they played that way for 3 games.
Zach, I know you were raving about Tennessee when you and I watched some of the games, this year. Were you surprised, Zach, that the Notre Dame pulled off this upset?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because everyone was. But it's also the environment too there in Knoxville. These last couple of years, it's just been crazy. If you watch a Tennessee game on TV, the place is going nuts for every single game. So I knew not only did Notre Dame have to go in and play the number one team, they had to go into that environment. And just like what they did last year, going to Mississippi State, Notre Dame struggled with that. So I was interested to see how they would fare as far as playing it at Lindsey Nelson Stadium.
I would imagine that experience paid off for them, right, Tom?
It did. You go down to Dudy Noble Field at Mississippi State last year. That place holds 15,000. An on-campus Division I baseball facility. They have 15,000 fans. I think they set a record over a 3-game super regional series. They set a record for fan attendance. So they kind of knew what the SEC was all about baseball-wise, and they thought they were going to be in for a tough time against Tennessee, playing at Lindsey Nelson Stadium in front of that fan base. And they heard all the stories about it. And you talked to some of the people over at Notre Dame this afternoon and said, how was the environment? Like, what was it all about? Was it everything that you thought? Was it everything as advertised? And they said, you know what? At the end of the day, it really wasn't that bad. Like, it was tougher than Mississippi State, but I think they were expecting a lot worse than what they experienced down there over those 3 games last weekend.
Now, Zane, you've traveled the country, playing baseball, coaching baseball. You and I went to the games there when it was at Notre Dame last year. What are your thoughts about environment?
I think kind of the real big, what sets Notre Dame apart this year from last year was going and having that experience, right? Mm-hmm. Going into Tennessee this year, they have that experience of playing in that huge environment. So I think, and they have a lot of returners this year that were there. You have kids like Jared Miller, Ryan Cole, guys that were there last year that have been a part of it, been on that stage, have heard those big loud crowds. Now it doesn't get to them, right? Now they're not at the plate freaking out like, holy cow, there's so many people making so much noise, I can't hear myself think. But now when you talk to them about Tennessee, I'm sure they're like, I didn't even notice it because they're so locked in. So I think that's what's going to set them apart. And what teams are going to kind of really sleep on them is, they're going to look at their numbers and they're not huge eye-popping numbers offensively Notre Dame's good on the mound, but people don't take into account that Notre Dame's played like way less games than everyone just because of climate. Their offensive numbers aren't going to be as eye-popping, shattering as Texas, as Oklahoma, Stanford, right? Because it's a cold weather game up here. It's a completely different vibe. You got to create, you got to run, you got to bunt, you got to do so many different things that I think a lot of people are going to underestimate Notre Dame.
I think there's a really interesting fact. I want to hear what Tom thinks about this, but Zane, you and I know that Notre Dame lost their big home run hitter, right? Nico goes to the draft last year playing for your Red Sox. He's having a decent year. He's already hit 8 home runs already, batting about 260, 270. So he's showing some power down in the minor leagues at Low A Salem. But Notre Dame's team this year, Tom, doesn't have that big home runner, do they?
No, they don't. It's a different kind of lineup. It's a different kind of team. Link Jarrett's mentioned today when we met with them, like they don't have that one big left-handed bat in the lineup that they could rely on like they did with Nico Cavadas. So different type of team. They're not going to hit a lot of home runs. Their biggest home run hitter is Jack Zizka. He's got 13. That's the most on the team. Another guy, Jack Brannigan's got 12. Brooks Coatsy has 11, and that's it. So they play a different style of baseball. It's almost like they play a different kind of game, just game to game. Like, what's it going to take? Is it going to have to be the long game? Is it going to have to be the short game? Are we going to have to run a little bit? We saw some of that in Knoxville. So it's like, how do we tailor our game as to what the opponent's doing, what the opposing pitcher's doing, what the situation calls for, instead of just saying, yeah, we'll get a couple guys on, and that number 3 hitter, Cavadas, he'll come up and hit another 450-foot home run.
Yeah, it changes the game when you have someone that can do that. I mean, obviously, I think as a coach, Zane, you're always coaching for the moment, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think having a bat like Cavadas was huge, but they've been able to really, you don't kind of, each year you don't just say, hey, like, this is our guy, we're going to kind of hope for him to come up in the right spots, right? You got to adjust and mold your teams to what you have, right? So your team is and style is going to be different every single year. You just got to, and that's what Link Jarrett does such a good job with. You saw it when he was at UNC Greensboro, right? He was able to mold those teams with the pieces that he had to make them successful. And that's kind of what he's done from last year to this year, is he's kind of, okay, we don't have Nico, so we got to find a way to lengthen our lineup, and we put the right guys in the right opportunities to be successful.
Zach, I know you probably have some questions for Mr. Noie there, because you follow the college game just like Zane does too. The Z's follows the game, right? Zach, what any thoughts or any questions for Tom?
Yeah, I guess, Tom, will this be your first time going to Omaha then?
Absolutely. It's on a bucket. If you're a college writer covering college sports like at Notre Dame, it's got to be on your bucket list. Everybody that's going there says, and that have been there, says it's just a phenomenal atmosphere. I'm anxious to get to Omaha and see what it's all about.
Yeah, I haven't been yet. It's really high on my list. I know Zane was lucky enough to go with his travel ball team when they played a weekend tournament. It was kind of like in conjunction with the College World Series and whatnot.
Yeah, somebody was talking about that today. It said they have like this huge travel ball weekend that coincides with the World Series, which is why like all the hotel rooms, the price of the hotel rooms out there are just absolutely outrageous.
And also they pan the camera throughout the stadium, and you see like all these teams of kids wearing their uniforms. It's like, what's going on?
Yeah, I think when we went, we had to stay like 45 minutes to an hour away from like actual Omaha. Like we stayed way out there.
Yeah.
That's
but
crazy.
It was a great atmosphere. I mean, I remember going, because I was like 14, so I was just a freshman in high school, and I remember going, and it was one of the coolest things ever. And it was the first year of TD Ameritrade, which is Charles Schwab now.
Yeah, it's Charles Schwab.
So yeah, it was the first year of the brand new stadium. So just seeing all the bells and whistles, and the opening ceremonies is what really stands out to me the most. It's just like kind of really seeing all those teams in there, and then the big announcements and all the teams walking in and the fireworks show. And it's a really cool atmosphere. And if anyone can go, you got to go.
Tom, with ND, and we're talking to Tom Noie from ND Insider, based in South Bend. He'll be at the College World Series this weekend. Can you kind of give us the rundown? I believe Notre Dame has that team from Texas, I think.
Yeah, some little team. I think they just threw the program together a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And oh, wait, by the way, Texas is making its 38th appearance in the College World Series, and this is Notre Dame's third. Like, that's great. Like, growing up, I remember watching the College World Series because it was like the infancy of ESPN. It was like ESPN, one of ESPN's first properties, way back in like the 70s and 80s. And it always seemed like when the World Series rolled around, Texas was in it. So this is like one of the premier college baseball programs in the country that Notre Dame's going to play against.
Now they'll play the night game, right, on Friday night.
Yeah, now you know that Notre Dame baseball has arrived nationally, because usually if I don't think if Notre Dame had done what it did in the regionals, in sweeping the Statesboro regional in 3 games and then going and beating Tennessee at Tennessee in 3 games, that they would have put Notre Dame in the primetime slot. Notre Dame baseball, based on what they've done, based on the momentum that they have, Notre Dame baseball right now is must-see TV, and they're going to get the primetime slot. Hopefully, but definitely on Friday. If they win on Friday, then they'll play again primetime on Sunday.
And the other the 2:00 game is who again?
It's let me see. I want to say Oklahoma, Texas A&M. So it's like a Big 12 invitational, well, along with Notre Dame. Like, here's 3 Big 12 teams. We'll stick Notre Dame in there as well.
And then I don't know who has the other bracket on them. I don't have it open on me right now.
It is. I don't know what the bracket. It's Stanford, Arkansas. I think it's Stanford and Arkansas, and Ole Miss and Auburn. So I know. I remember it's just loaded with SEC teams.
Yeah. So it even makes this appearance by Notre Dame that much. I don't want to say like odd, the unicorn or whatever. It doesn't seem to, that's the right way to put it, but it does, right?
Oh, it's odd, and it is absolutely a unicorn, because you look at the way college baseball, Division I baseball, kind of looked at Notre Dame this year, because they were ranked as high as number 1. They spent a lot of time in the top 10. Their RPI was 13, but when it came time to select the 16 regionals, NCAA selection committee said, "Yeah, you guys did a lot going 40-15. You're 17-3 at home. You're 16-11 in the ACC, but you haven't done enough to host a regional. So we're going to send you to Statesboro, Georgia." So it's just something with it's kind of a bias that Notre Dame has to fight every year in the NCAA as to, hey, you know what? We may have to do all these crazy things to try to get games in February and March, even sometimes April and May. But at the end of the day, we can play some pretty good baseball up here as well.
Has the team already left? Are they there? Or they leave tomorrow?
No, they left. They practiced, they met the media, did their media stuff, and left, I'd say, on the charter about 3:15. So they were going to fly into Omaha, visit Charles Schwab Field, get kind of a feel for the place, and just kind of embrace everything that's going on right now with the program, and not be so locked in on, we got to go beat Texas.
Which they do.
They do.
How do you beat Texas? I mean, we can go on about this. I mean, how do you beat Texas? I mean, I guess, the way you beat Tennessee, right?
Right. You just go play your game. Like, you look at, like Link Jarrett said when last week, when they were getting ready to play Tennessee, if you look at the stats and you look at all the numbers and look at all the stuff that Tennessee had done, it could be kind of a little overwhelming, to be honest, with these guys. Like, he doesn't want them looking at all the stats and what these players are doing, and what they just, they respect that program, go out on the field and play the Notre Dame brand of baseball. And if they do that, and they hit and they run and they pitch and they keep field and everything, then after 9 innings, they'll feel pretty good about what the possibilities of moving on are.
I mentioned a little earlier that we would ask you about your background. So are you like myself that dreamed of playing in the major league ones one day, or did you always want to be a journalist?
Doesn't everybody that plays baseball dream of playing in the major leagues? I played baseball growing up since maybe the age of 5, played all the way through high school. Baseball now, maybe not my favorite sport. I'm still a basketball guy at heart. Obviously, Notre Dame football, you can't live in South Bend with it and not follow Notre Dame football. So baseball was a sport that I always played growing up. You felt like I played in the suburbs of Chicago. So yeah, I'm going to play in Wrigley Field one day. I was more of a Cubs fan than a Sox fan, but then I got smart and said, yeah, I don't think I'm going to, instead of being a 5-tool player, I don't think they're going to be looking at a 1 or 2 tool player. I'm going to do something else. Instead of playing the game or being in a game, I'll do the next best thing and just go cover games.
So where did you go to college at that then?
I went to the University of Dayton, graduated in 1990. I spent 2 years as a sports editor of a small newspaper out in Wilmington, Ohio. And it's funny, the first job assignment I had covering stuff at the Wilmington News Journal was in 1990. I covered the 1990 World Series between the A's and the Reds. Also covered the 1990 NLCS when the Pirates had Barry Bonds and Andy Van Slyke and all those guys. So there's still a little bit of baseball coverage in my background. I've been in, like we talked about earlier, I've been in South Bend since 1992. And if there's a sport that's associated with Notre Dame or a high school sport in town, odds are that I've covered it in the 30 years I've been with the paper.
Now, Zane, Tom mentioned that, if you're going to be in South Bend, you're going to be following Notre Dame football, but do you think something like this will help elevate Notre Dame baseball to even, bigger, prominence there at least here in the Midwest?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think Notre Dame doing what it's done the last couple of years and with Link Jarrett around has really turned around kind of, I think people are going to actually, seek going out to those games because, you drive by the stadium or if you go to a game in early March, there's hardly anyone there. It's just, that's just the reality of it. It's cold. Not a lot of people go. I think that's going to kind of really start. Actually, people are going to pay attention to it and be like, oh, hey, Notre Dame's playing. Let's go check it out. Or, hey, it's on ESPN Plus. You want to turn on Notre Dame baseball? Like people are going to actually want to do that now. And it's going to be really, really good for not just Notre Dame and South Bend, but all the teams in the Midwest that are Division Ones. And, Tom, one thing I want to ask you is kind of with Florida State, you know where I'm going with this.
I knew this was coming up. It had to come
Florida
up.
State getting rid of their coach, Link Jarrett being a Florida State guy. Do you think we're going to hear something?
Whenever it happens, the minute this Notre Dame baseball season ends, Link Jarrett will not, I feel, be the coach of Notre Dame baseball anymore. It's just something where it's been such a rocket rise. Like he came here 2 years ago, actually it's 3 years ago. It's always funky because of the pandemic. He coached 6 games that first year, and then everything got called off. So, but he came here and nobody had any idea who this Link Jarrett guy was. Like, who's this guy? UNCG. He's moving from the Southern Conference to the ACC. What he has done has been nothing short of staggering. It's amazing. It's incredible. And the more that he does, the more when you're following this program day to day, you're thinking, I don't know how Notre Dame is going to wind up keeping him, because from a financial standpoint, Florida State baseball or Clemson baseball or Southern California baseball, the 3 big Division I jobs that have openings right now, they can throw a lot more resources, a lot more financial commitment behind those programs than Notre Dame can, because you want Link Jarrett to stay at Notre Dame. You want to see him be a regular in the College World Series and winning super regionals. But at the end of the day, Notre Dame baseball is always be behind the Notre Dame football program. Like I've talked about, my background is Notre Dame men's basketball. When Mike Bray walked in the building in 2000, the athletic director at the time said, look at our arena, look at the Joyce Center. It's needs some work. It's got duct tape holding seats together. Don't worry, we'll get the arena taken care of. We'll get you a new arena within 2 years. Well, it took 9 years before they redid the Joyce Center, because you have to stand in line at Notre Dame. Like if football needs something and baseball needs something, football's going to get it first, second, and third before baseball. So I really like Link Jarrett. I think he's a phenomenal coach. He's an even better guy, but it's going to be really hard if he wants to really maximize his career as a Division I baseball coach. He might have to go do it at someplace other than Notre Dame.
Yeah, I think as soon as I saw that Florida State opening happen, immediately, I think everyone did. It was like, all right, Link's gone after this year. Because I actually knew when Notre Dame hired Link Jarrett, I said, Notre Dame's he's gonna turn this thing around. You watch. Mm-hmm. Because when I was a GA, the other GA had come from UNCG. He was just a player. He was just, he had injuries or whatever, but he was helping out on the staff with Link Jarrett there. So when he was telling me all these stories about Link Jarrett, hey, I was talking to Coach Jarrett. I'm like, he keeps talking about this guy. Who is he? Let me go look it up. I'm like, holy cow, this dude has turned UNCG all the way around. And then when Notre Dame hired him, said, boom, Notre Dame got a guy.
There are talented dudes on this roster, whether it's Jack Brannigan, Ryan Cole, David Lamanna, Carter Putz, and they're really good baseball players, but Notre Dame is in the College World Series really because of Link Jarrett. Like, that guy he's just a phenomenal coach. He knows how to connect with his guys. He knows how to develop a program to where, like, I think 2 years before he got here, they finished last in the ACC. And it was the minute he got here, he talked about, I saw that team in 2020, and he said, that was a team that can compete in Omaha. I saw that team in 2021, and he said, I think we can compete in Omaha. And same thing this year, the 2022 team, he said, we've got a chance to get to Omaha. Lo and behold, they're sitting in Omaha, Nebraska right now.
So is Notre Dame a favorite to maybe win this thing?
I would say yes. Yeah, absolutely. Like, given what they like, it was so easy for them. The first week, it was easy to go play because they were so upset and felt like they had gotten so slighted by the selection committee, and nobody was really talking about them. Like, wait, we're going to send a team from South Bend, Indiana to go play in Statesboro, Georgia. Nobody paid any attention. Like, all those games from Statesboro were on ESPN Plus. We don't need to see him on ESPN. We don't need to see him on ESPN2. Let's just park him on ESPN Plus and make people pay the $6.99 a month to watch Notre Dame baseball. So nobody had any idea about Notre Dame when they won the regional 3 games in 3 days. And then the second week, all they had to do was go beat Tennessee at Tennessee. And everybody was like, yeah, Notre Dame, you won a regional. You had a pretty good season, but good luck. You're going to get your lunch handed to you in Tennessee. And then now all of a sudden they beat Tennessee, and I think they are the national story. Like we talked about, that's why they're on prime time on Friday. And I think they're not going to sneak up on anybody in Omaha right now, because it's like, you better watch this Notre Dame team, because if they can do what they did at Tennessee, they can beat anybody. And in the end, 12 days after this thing starts, they might be the last team standing.
Well, I think that's interesting, because that says that's logic. I think you're coming from a journalist standpoint, right? It's logic, but from the baseball standpoint, I think it's going to take more convincing than that. Zane, I think you were saying no, right? Did you say no? They don't have a chance.
I mean, I wouldn't say they don't have a chance. I wouldn't say they're the favorite. That's it. I think they're a scary team that if you give them mistakes, they're going to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
I think teams are going to realize we got to play some really, really clean baseball to beat Notre Dame. But to say they're the favorite, it's a little up there, but I think they're a team that can surprise a lot of people and go a lot further than people are going to give them credit for.
How about you, Zach?
It's the whole Midwest school thing, right? Mm-hmm. When Michigan went to the College World Series in 2019, nobody expected them to go all the way to the finals to play Vanderbilt. And then they go to the finals, they win game 1 against Vandy. And of course, they lost game 2 and 3 to Vanderbilt, who won the College World Series. But Tom, you mentioned the opening at Clemson. The head coach for Michigan, Eric Bakich, was just announced yesterday that he took the head coaching job at Clemson.
Nice. So that's off the board, but you got USC and Florida State.
Yep. So things are rolling. Yep. I mean, I would love to see a Midwest school do really well at the College World Series. Of course, we always want those teams to do well. But I think that's where that definitely comes into play when you're like, they're not the favorite because they're not in the ACC. They're not in the SEC. Mm-hmm. They're not a big Southern school, or even out West, Stanford, something like that, who's got that history, right? Yeah. Of all these, I've been here this many times, this many championships and whatnot. So that'll be exciting. I really hope Notre Dame does well.
I do want to touch on one more thing. And Tom, we really do appreciate your time here. We won't keep you much longer, but Zane, I really want to hear your insight on the recruiting standpoint, because we talked a little bit about how, Notre Dame makes it to this level. And then there are a lot of players. I mean, that's your job as a recruiter at Indiana University South Bend, right? So, you have the pool of players that can play at these top programs. It's not very big, right? And then you have options. Players are trying to find what schools fit them. will something like this help or urge a player to maybe look to other programs outside of those traditional hotbeds?
Yes and no. I think it's going to definitely drive people more towards Notre Dame. But if Link goes somewhere else, Notre Dame kind of it all depends who they hire next. And, I think people aren't going to be as, so gung ho on, hey, I have to go to an SEC school to get to Omaha.
Right.
The Michigans can make it, the Notre Dames can make it. It's not this, and with the transfer portal now, it's just recruiting is just insane. Like anyone can really go anywhere and impact a team, and that's all kids really want to do. Is they want to go there, they want to have a chance to win a lot of games, and they want to be the guy. Right. So I think that's where a lot of it comes in, and I think it's going to help, Notre Dame a lot, depending if Link Jarrett sticks around.
Yeah. Well, Tom, anything else you want to add? You have to get up bright and early tomorrow, and we get to see you on. You're going to be on TV, right?
No TV. I got a face for radio, so I'm packed for 12 days. I expect to be there for 12 days, and we'll see where Notre Dame is when everything ends here in late June.
Well, we will encourage people to follow you so we can, see what's happening in real time. You are on Twitter, of course, right? Can you kind of tell us where to find you?
Absolutely. Let me see where.
Where am I?
What's my address? I don't know what my address is. It's at T Noie, NDI. All Notre Dame baseball you want to hear, see, learn about at T Noie, NDI. You'll get everything you need right there.
And of course, Zak and Zane are also active on the Twitter and social media. Zak, what's your handle again?
Mine or the podcast handle?
Well, why don't you do both? Because Ty typically does the podcast handle, but you might as well handle that too for us.
Yeah. So our Twitter account is Big League Dreaming the podcast at BLDPOD. So you can follow us there. We as soon as we drop new episodes, we put it on there for everyone to connect and get those, whether it's Apple Podcast, Spotify, or on YouTube directly. So we'll let you know, Tom, as soon as it goes live, we'll send it to you.
There you go, my man.
All right. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Thanks to Tom Noie from the South Bend Tribune, ND insider, columnist, and men's basketball beat writer, and just about one of the coolest guys we've had on the show this season. So thanks again for being on with us.
You got it.
All right. Take care, everyone. Have a great evening. Zak, Zane, see you later.